big movement in the United States, sport elsewhere as well. They have a particular version of evangelical Christianity based on some reading in the book of Revelations, which says that there's going to be a major war in Armageddon. Everybody slaughters each other. The people who are saved, they rise to heaven. It's wonderful. Jesus comes with 1,000 years of peace, and the Jews get exterminated, except for 144,000 of them who, I don't know where that number comes from. I guess the 12, something about the 12 tribes. And they convert, so they're okay. It was the most anti-Semitic movement in history. Even Hitler didn't go this far. But it's very strongly supportive of Israel, and Israel strongly supports it. That movement really took off in 1948, because that was the first sign of the Second Coming, the forming of the State of Israel. These are not insignificant things. In fact, these are very deeply rooted, even in not just evangelical circles, but also elite circles. And incidentally, this goes way up. Reagan apparently believed a lot of this stuff. His handlers kind of kept him sort of quiet, so when God started raving, they shut him up. But there were enough hints to indicate that he probably believed it. George W. Bush almost certainly did. And here's an interesting incident, which I didn't believe when I heard it at first, but it's been confirmed. In January 2003, right before the Iraq invasion, when the United States was trying to mobilize European support for the invasion, Bush met with Jacques Chirac, French president, and to try to convince him to get France to join. And in the course of their discussion, Bush brought up a very obscure passage from the book of Ezekiel in the Bible. There's a passage there which plays a big role in evangelical mythology. It's a passage that nobody understands. It's a passage about how Gog and Magog come from the north and attack Israel. And nobody knows whether Gog and Magog are people or places or whatever they are. For Reagan, it was Russia. That's Gog and Magog. For Bush, it was Saddam Hussein. So he started talking to Chirac about this Gog and Magog business, and Chirac hadn't a clue what he was talking about. So he approached the Élysée, the French Foreign Office, and asked them, what is this maniac raving about? And they had no idea, so they approached a Belgian theologian. That's how I heard about him. He sent me something he wrote. He wrote a kind of a disquisition on this passage and how it's interpreted and so on and so forth. So maybe they could figure out what Bush is talking about. Well, I read it. I didn't believe it, frankly. It just was too crazy. But I mentioned it to an Australian researcher who I know, and he looked into it. And it's true. It shows up in the biographies of Chirac and so on. Well, what does this mean? This means that somebody sitting in the White House, the most powerful person in the world, is a believer in extremist evangelical lunacies. It's a frightening phenomenon, but for that matter, it's frightening enough, I think, that people like say Woodrow Wilson, Roosevelt, Cabinet, and others, Truman, also pretty much believed these things. In fact, practicing Christians, if they really believe what they're reading and what they're saying, is a very natural conclusion. The Holy Book says it. And the United States is kind of off the spectrum in religious belief, but Britain's pretty far off the spectrum too, not as far as the United States. And all of this, these are many factors that combine to account for the strong support for Israeli policies. It's a hard nut to crack. Not impossible, but we should be aware of what's involved.
firstly, thank you very much for coming to Cardiff. It's a real pleasure to hear you personally. Can I just ask, there's a suggestion that what's happening in North Africa at the moment is really, the nature of the conflict in North Africa is really about an ethnic conflict between Shiites and Sunnis. Do you think there's any credibility to that view?
Could you repeat that question?
The question was, do you think there's any credibility to the view that the conflict is about Sunni and Shia in North Africa and the Middle East?
Do you think there's any credibility to the view that this conflict is really about
Well, there were two questions then, one about Wisconsin. Actually, what happened in Wisconsin is extremely important. Right around end of February, one important moment in the Arab world uprisings was when Kamal Abbas, he's one of the major labor leaders in Egypt and a leader of the January 25th uprisings, and he sent a message in the name of the Egyptian labor movement to the workers of Wisconsin and said, you showed solidarity with us in our struggle, we want to show solidarity with you in your struggle. That's pretty important. That's what the labor movement has been about for back into the 19th century, about solidarity, working people supporting each other internationally, and in fact all people doing it. It's an important moment, and it's real. I mean, what's happening in Egypt and Wisconsin is the two trajectories are kind of crossing. They're going in opposite directions. In Egypt, working people and others are struggling to gain rights that have been denied them by the dictatorships. In Wisconsin and other states, they're trying to preserve rights that had been won by hard struggle and are now under serious attack. So the far right in Wisconsin, which has a ton of money behind it and happens to have political power, what they're trying to do, I mean, the pretext is deficit, kind of like England. It has nothing to do with the deficit. It's easy to show. But the pretext is that because of the deficit, they have to eliminate collective bargaining rights. Zero to do with the deficit. But the idea is try to destroy the last vestige of the union movement. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why business hates unions, and anyone associated with them hates unions. And with all their flaws, the labor movement has been, organized labor movement, the major barrier to the total destruction of democracy and the takeover of political systems. And these are major struggles everywhere here too. I mean, you're not going to have anything like a functioning democracy if there's no barrier to total corporate takeover of the whole system. You know, whatever the pretext is, efficiency, deficits, or whatever words are roomed up. And attack on collective bargaining is a serious part of this. It's quite striking that I didn't anticipate, I don't think anyone anticipated the scale of the uprisings in Wisconsin. It's been pretty impressive. 70,000 people out on the streets occupying the state capitol for weeks. They have a lot of them, about two-thirds, according to polls, about two-thirds of the population supports the Wisconsin workers and their right of collective bargaining. So the right-wing, corporate-backed Republicans are fighting quite a powerful popular force, but no political force. So for example, if you notice, President Obama has not said a word about this, barely a word. There is no organized political force that stands opposed to the concentrated corporate system. There's a pretty simple reason for that, too. Elections in the United States are by now like a total they're bought. You can predict quite well which candidate is going to win just by the campaign.